And it kind of takes us full circle here because, again, all these pieces that we're doing to help the employees grow and be better really full circles back to increasing and enhancing that patient experience and the service culture. So that's kind of how I feel the loop goes. We get the right people on with the right training, with the right behaviors that support a positive culture, and you've got the secret sauce.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzloff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage. Well, welcome to another episode of Culture Change RX. I'm delighted to have another guest with me here today, and it is another one of our coaches. And so Teresa is here with me today. Not only is she a coach for Capstone Leadership Solutions, and she's been working in that capacity for several years now, assisting us in our mission and our work, but she's also been a very experienced healthcare executive working within a rural healthcare organization, supporting them in the accomplishment of their missions. So very glad to have you with me here today, Teresa. If you want to do a little more intro of yourself, I'll give you that opportunity now, and then we're going to get into a topic today about patient experience and service cultures in healthcare. But let folks know a little bit more about you.
All right. Well, thanks, Sue, for having me. I'm grateful to be able to be part of this today. As you mentioned, I'm Teresa Feidt, and I've had over 30 years now of clinical, operational, and executive type background over the years. And so have worked very hard over the years as it relates in particular to patient experience and culture, and definitely find my passion there. And that is part of why I joined the Capstone team, to be able to pay it forward and teach others about the positive aspects of great patient experience.
Yes. We do, pride ourselves in that as a company when it comes to our coaching team, is that not only do they know this stuff, they have lived and led this stuff. And you're definitely another example of that from our coaching team. Glad to have you here today to talk about this topic that I know you are so passionate about. In Teresa's work with us, she leads what we call our patient experience team chats. So in each of our partner organizations around the country where they have employee-driven teams that are working to elevate the patient experience, making it more safe and satisfying in their organizations, each of those employee-driven teams has a team leader, and they're supported by a monthly group coaching call that Teresa leads every month. And so they get to assist each other and be guided by Teresa, and her expertise can come forward. There's other things that Teresa does to support this and the work of our partners, but that in particular is something that we're very thankful to have her at the helm of that. So Teresa, in thinking about just the general aspect of healthcare being a service industry, and that when we're in a service industry, healthcare is like that, hotels are like that, restaurants are, there's a lot of businesses and industries that are service related, people taking care of people, not making widgets. Can you think of just an example of maybe an experience you had outside of healthcare that showcases your ideal or your love of great service?
Sure, definitely. I have an example back from about 15 years ago, I would say. I was at a conference and I had the opportunity to stay at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And I was just wowed from the minute I walked in to how I was greeted so kindly and pleasantly and escorted from one place to the next. And then what really wowed me the next morning is I left the front door and again was greeted and door held open for me on my way out, heading out to go on a run. And when I returned, the gentleman at the front door was standing with a cold bottled water ready in hand for me, knowing that I'd be coming back from that run. And I was just wowed by the personalized care and attention to my experience that morning. It was amazing, and it's really stuck with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's interesting. There's a couple points about that is that it was so long ago and it still has this impression on you, right?
Exactly.
And so the
Yeah.
lasting nature of such a small gesture, right? It's just amazing. And then also the fact that it really didn't take a lot, did it? You
No,
know what I mean? Like that, it
exactly.
really, yeah, we just sometimes make this seem like a big monster, this
Mhm.
idea of great service. And I think that's one of the things that I try to hold out with healthcare organizations is that it's possible. We think it's impossible to delight our patients and our customers, but it really is within the realm of possibility, and it's not as big as we make it out to be. So in your work in particular, let's talk about in your own healthcare organization, not maybe in the coaching and the work that you do with our multiple healthcare organizations that are partners around the country that are, have real intentional efforts underway to make this better. But think about your own experience in your own healthcare organization where you were a leader. What's maybe one of the things that that was really important in your organization in the work that you did to achieve very high rankings of satisfaction? And it's something that you experienced the transformation. You got it to a level of very high patient satisfaction and experience and kept it there for a long time. So what's
Yeah.
maybe one of the magical pills that were part of
Yeah.
that transformation?
Right. I think part of the secret sauce for us was truly shifting from top-down type leadership approach to more of an employee-driven approach. And as you mentioned earlier, employee-driven teams. And those teams started to form and help with our cultural behavior standards, for example. Our standards teams was one of our first teams that was formed. And they provided just a real basic guideline, but it's amazing, again, just how putting something in writing, we always refer to them as our X, and X being with 3 A's, and that referred to attitude, appearance, accountability, communication, teamwork, and service. And then there were specific behavioral expectations under each one of those areas. And over time, that really became part of our evaluation process. It became part of when we onboarded and interviewed new employees. So those behavioral standards really took on a life of its own, where we not only wanted the technical skills that we need in healthcare in different positions, but also the behavioral standards, and that you can't come to us with just one. We need both to be an exceptional organization.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. In Capstone, we talk about using top of mind tactics, like you can put these things in writing, but you have to keep them front and center and talk about them a lot and those kind of things, or else, even though they're common sense, right? To your point, it's like they're common sense, right? But they're not maybe commonly and consistently practiced. And in the busyness of our work and the importance of our work, sometimes we lose sight of maybe some of these behaviors that add value to the experience.
Right. And I would add, Sue, that I think it's really important that communications boards were a tool that we used throughout our organization to monitor. And so staff could see where we were at. Those behavioral standards were always front and center in every department. Staff started to hold each other accountable for these things. They had a code back in the day. This was like 17 years ago. So there were still beepers or pagers.
Oh, yeah.
Code, if something was going on around the patient that we didn't feel was maybe appropriate, the other staff member would say, "Oh, is that your beeper going off?" And it was just a subtle code to say, let's stop here and think about what we're doing and what impact we're having on the patient, and maybe we can pivot our style or approach given the situation. So those are a few tactics and things that definitely, stick out. There's just so many things that just the redundancy month after month that our teams would be pushing out information and firing up the teams and celebrating successes, certainly too, along the way, that really help people connect the dots, I think, of meaningful what they were doing is meaningful and making a difference to our patients, and thus quality and everything was going hand in hand with that. I think the good people drive our quality and service scores, certainly, and then that helps grow our services and ultimately helps increase our financial bottom line. So it all really comes full circle to that patient experience, though, and starts with our people.
You're right. You use the word accountability more than once already. We haven't been too far into this, and you've used that word accountability. I know that early when we formed our company 12 plus years ago, that originally we talked a lot about, and in fact, we had it right in our framework, this word accountability. And we got this feedback, some healthcare leaders and even employees that said, that word seems negative. Now, I'd love to change the perception of that word in every organization as culture, as something that's positive, just like giving somebody a call out and feedback is maybe considered a difficult or negative conversation. And I'd like to reframe it as an act of caring and that it's positive. And same thing with accountability. But when you talk about accountability tactics, I know that you mentioned those communication boards and transparently reporting information. That's a form of accountability by just being transparent with how are we doing? What do patients say, their satisfaction is in their services. When somebody's willing to call somebody out and say, your beeper's going off, that's another form of peer-to-peer accountability. Is there another example or maybe even more examples of accountability where that was helpful to your cause?
Yeah, well, I think certainly when we do our rounding, it's a great opportunity to be assessing both when we do patient rounding and employee rounding to ensure that behavioral standards are being upheld and being able to ask straight out an employee, are you struggling with any of these behavioral standards? Where might I be able to help support you and that sort of thing. So giving them the right tools and tricks there to do their job well. And then another part of accountability tactics, I would say, is again at annual evaluation time. And annual evaluation time, as most leaders know, shouldn't come as a surprise time. So if people have been having issues maintaining the behavioral standards, they should have been coached on that and had those discussions prior to annual eval. But certainly I often would pull out our 2-page behavioral standards. And so then we could have that candid conversation about, okay, what do we do about this? How can we work together and create an action plan if need be? Because we certainly want people to succeed on our team. But in some cases, some people, opt not to follow the behavioral standards. And we know that can be human nature sometimes as well.
Yeah. That's, an important part of leadership, obviously, is not just that informal feedback and that coaching in the moment, but also that more formal opportunity that we have. Sometimes it takes a combination of both to get the result that we want and need to be able to help our people, right? To set them up for success. And, I was thinking too, Teresa, in thinking about our conversation today, is that even when we do all these amazing things, we've got the standards, we've got the teams, we've got accountability tactics, we've got training, we've got feedback systems and all of this, is that because, it's such a complex business, it's a people serving people business, there's going to be times where things don't go well, we're going to fall short, we're maybe not going to serve our patients to the level that they desire, expect, or deserve. Did your organization have a way to formally train employees to engage in a process of service recovery or some sort of system of noticing when things go wrong and initiating fixes and resolutions to those things?
Yes, we certainly did. We did a service recovery educational rollout with all of our staff. Certainly when we first kicked this off years ago, we had created black and yellow toolboxes is what they look like. And inside the toolbox was some service recovery type tools, a gas card if somebody arrived at an appointment on the wrong date, for example. We also, in the service recovery box, as another way to serve our patients outside of error being made, though, we would also include in there, I want to mention, birthday cards, anniversary cards, again, in case one of our patients had to experience one of those types of events while they were in the organization. The staff had those right at their fingertip and were empowered to use them. But again, solving problems at the lowest level and the staff being able to right the wrong in the moment with our patients as part of service recovery, I think has gone a long way for our program there.
just taking this quick break to let you know that the registration deadline is coming up soon for our Healthcare Executive Forum that is happening on June 12th and 13th, 2024 at Mission Point Resort on beautiful Mackinac Island here in Michigan. Join us for these 2 days of immersive learning, engaging discussions, and networking opportunities. Go to capstoneleadership.net. This year's topic is maximizing momentum with trust, teamwork, and time. Registration deadline is May 20th. Get your spot today. capstoneleadership.net. Yeah. It's amazing that I've heard the research years ago that if someone is dissatisfied in whether it's healthcare organization or any other service industry, if they become dissatisfied with the experience, but it is recognized, acknowledged, and addressed, almost often it's just an apology and that acknowledgement that's actually the only piece that's necessary. Right. But sometimes it's more than that. But right. Those patients, those customers can be more loyal than someone who didn't have a problem. So I think it's one of those crucial elements that even when you have great service quite consistently, but especially in the beginning when you don't, right. that you need this process for frontline people being able to recognize and remedy very quickly.
And then our patient experience team, Sue, would look at all the service recoveries. They would get a copy of every service recovery within the organization so they could track and trend and help see, did we have a bigger process issue in the organization than maybe we realized, or is it just something going on in one department and we can work with that leader to help improve the process? So it was helpful in many ways, really.
Yeah. I know that a lot of organizations that come to Capstone, and primarily we work with small and rural healthcare organizations, typically they come to us with two big problems, one or both of two big problems. One, they have either an employee experience problem, like an employee morale problem, high turnover, high vacancy rates, low satisfaction or engagement scores. It's palpable, right? When that's happening, It's kind of this feeling in your organization that is not as good as you want it to be. And, or they have this patient experience kind of challenge where, they have a lot of patient complaints, their satisfaction scores are low, their reputation in the community is poor. What we've come to discover, and I know that, with you being on our coaching team, but even before that in your own organization, I know that you saw the link between the employee experience and the patient experience, and that when we can amp up the employee experience, that actually helps improve the patient experience too. It's really hard to have a great patient experience if your employees are dissatisfied, disengaged,
right,
and those kind of things. So what might have your organization done in the area? I know the behavior standards you talk about affect both the employee and patient experience, right? They really do. But is there anything else you can think of where you thought, wow, we improved this in the employee experience and it had a positive effect in the patient experience?
Yeah, some of the things we did, well, we started a well-being team and added that to our employee-driven teams. But even prior to that, early on in our cultural journey, we did a bunch of things actually to help work-life balance for our employees. We were hearing that's what they were struggling with. Many of our staff worked, 5 days a week and had issues getting out to get their oil change, for example. Might seem like a silly little thing, but we were able to offer a service locally where they would come pick up our employee's car while they're at work, take it back to their shop, do the oil change, and bring it back by the end of the employee's shift. Didn't take a lot of effort or energy on our part, actually, but our employees loved it. We've done other things where we've more recently filled out grant applications to help provide a childcare subsidy for our employees with young children and daycare expenses. And so there's a lot of things I think we can do out there to help support our employees. Also, just helping connect the dots with the employees and, again, what they're doing and why and how it makes a difference. I mean, that doesn't cost anything, but I think when we help connect those dots and they feel like they have meaningful, purposeful work, it makes a world of difference. And again, doing that by recognizing them. We have recognition programs as well that I think fall right in line with that. I'll never forget one employee who told me after 15 years of being there, she'd never received a thank you card. And I was the first one to ever write her. And we kept going, thank you to the thank you to the thank you to the thank you. I was so excited. And I was like, well, thank you. And no, but it was really just, it was so impactful because clearly it had made such a
Yes.
difference. And so, again, a
Yeah.
lot of times it isn't these large initiatives. It's just taking the time
Yeah.
when leaders are busy or people are busy to
Yeah.
recognize each other and share experiences with each other.
Yeah, yeah. And it's such a good point you make. Again, we started with this, it's these small things, but
Mhm.
it's that it's continuous and systematic. And so when we talk about culture being this is how we do things around here,
Right.
we see this that there's a lot of start stop, there's this episodic, we did it once and we felt like why should we have to send a thank you note again? Why
Right.
should we have to train them again?
Right.
Why should we, whatever. And so it's this continuity and this continuousness that it's repeated and repeated and repeated. So small stuff repeated, it's amazing
I
how that matters.
Right. I think about like sports teams, Sue, and we talk about coaching, right? Well, sports coaches are out there high fiving the player or patting them on the back or, whatever to say good job or, bringing them to the bench and doing some coaching in live time. I mean, really, that's what
Yeah.
we need to be doing in healthcare in so many ways. And we just like you say, we kind of have to shift our mindset a little bit to the feedback being more of a gift and something that is important that we're constantly coaching and supporting and raising each other up.
Yeah. That's such a good analogy that, if we had a player on the basketball court that was continually doing something in a certain way that could be corrected to get a better outcome, the
Mhm.
coach would think nothing, or even another player would think nothing about helping them
Right.
because it's for the good of the team. And
Exactly.
for some reason, it's amazing how work cultures and teams, it's somehow perceived like almost negative. That's
Mm,
part of the culture change is that we have to normalize
we
that
do.
excellence is what we're going for and that
Mhm.
coaching and feedback and accountability and training and all of these things are just part of the journey there and they're normal and they're okay and they're positive and they're good for us and not negative. I know that you're very close to so many organizations through your role with Capstone and you're able to meet with them on a regular basis through these Capstone chats with the patient experience teams. And I'm wondering, has there been any recent topics that have been like hot topics of discussion
Sure.
among patient experience team leaders in different organizations? What might one of those be?
Sure. Well, we've had like three that come to mind over the past several months. One is we certainly spent time talking about ideas to promote and support Patient Experience Week. And so it's fun on those chats where you get ideas from lots of different organizations and people come back ready to build upon each
Mm-hmm.
other's ideas. And so that's very beneficial. One of the other items I actually asked for help with was wayfinding. I was in the midst of a large renovation project and was talking about wayfinding and signage in our new
Mm-hmm.
building. And actually, in that conversation, I was talking to others who are working on their patient family advisory councils, where they're bringing outside past patients onto their patient experience team, essentially, to help guide them. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's something actually we did to add to our insight, seeing things through the patient eyes and lens versus our own, and brought patients onto our team to help us with that wayfinding. So those were a few examples of
Oh,
how
yeah.
the team has
Yeah.
really worked together in some of the hot topics as some places are growing and building and that sort of thing. So
hmm a couple things that just those examples bring up for me related to improving the patient experience is that Wayfinding is an example where there's a process or a planning component to it, such
Mm-hmm.
as functional adjacency when you're renovating departments or building a new building, and making sure that wayfinding is easy and logical of where people might be going through your building, and signage and things of that. But then there's the people part of it, which
Right,
is the
right.
people finding lost people in the hallway, taking them where they need to go, really having that helpfulness in that regard. So it's that process and people thing, and the standards really set the people part of it in place, is having those high standards for how the people interact
Yeah.
with the processes and the patients. So that came to mind. Is it's kind of hard to, again, separate some of that stuff. If you want to improve the patient experience, there's the culture part of it, but then there's the process part of it. And
Definitely
it really
takes both.
takes both. Same thing with safety. Like when you want to create a safe and satisfying patient experience and have a culture for safety, definitely workflow and process and systems and things like that that make care safer is part of the effort, but also the culture aspects of creating a highly reliable organization. So I
Yes.
think that's what's always attracted me to improvement work in healthcare. Is I kind of have a process brain, but I also love the people side of it too,
Right.
and the human nature
Right.
side.
When I was
Yeah.
serving as the chief nursing officer role, I implemented the just culture proponents and how, we needed to create an environment where people felt it was safe to come forward, and that reporting near misses is a good thing because we can focus on the process, and what might be going wrong in the process flow wasn't meant to be a blame game on the people side of that, but to focus on the process and avoid harm
Mm-hmm.
happening to our patients. So that safety plays right in there,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, with the patient experience and their
Yeah.
result. And
Yeah.
one thing
Yeah.
along with that just culture and the service culture in general, Sue, that I don't want to miss saying, it, I maybe just take it for granted, but so I'd like to say it out loud is, it really starts with building trusting relationships, one conversation at a time with people, the whole cultural shift. I mean, we have to stay true to what our vision and mission and values are, and we just really need to keep relaying and communicating that with our staff and being dependable, following through and following up so that they know they can trust that this is not the flavor of the day type
Mm-hmm.
situation. When we're making a cultural transformation such as this, it's for the long game.
Right, right. I heard this yesterday. I was speaking at an event put on by the Michigan Hospital Association yesterday, and one of the other speakers that was there, she made this statement: build relationships before you need them. Right. And
Mhm.
I was thinking about that proactive nature of when we build relationships within our teams, with leaders and employees, with providers and the like, and we have these great relationships. Then when we have to have maybe some of these tougher conversations about what needs to be
Right,
improved, what's not working right, either collectively as a team or a department, or in a difficult situation that we're faced with a patient or whatever, is like we're not in that situation of deficit where we don't have the relationship that can
right.
bring us through maybe a challenging service or safety situation. So,
I've had multiple people, Sue, in my years of experience of coaching and counseling, if you will, that have actually hugged me at the end of the feedback session. They are just so grateful that I took the time to share what the issue was, and oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was doing this. Or so I think sometimes even as leaders we go in thinking the worst, or this conversation is going to go
mm-hmm,
terribly, but if we go in with that, I care, I noticed and I
mm-hmm,
care and I want to help
yeah,
you be a better you. And so I think we have to always have that positive spin of looking at
yeah.
feedback, and that it's always trying to raise people up versus bat them down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, with that is, when we talk about having standards, high standards, which really we can aspire to, is that you mentioned, even thank you notes and recognition and positive praise and reinforcement is, we always love to talk about that 3-to-1 ratio, that you need 3 times more positive feedback going to people about what they're doing right. And that's so important, because if we're just going at this with the accountability piece, which is probably why accountability is perceived as negative,
Sure,
is because we're just at a ratio, right?
sure.
It, it,
Right, right.
it wouldn't sit, or we're out of relationship. We're out of relationship. If we're in a relationship with somebody, it makes it way easier. to
Mm-hmm.
call them out or give them feedback of things they could do better or differently. But if we never have thanked them for what they're doing right, and we only talk to them about what could be better, what isn't going right, then our relationships probably, and even our efforts for service, high service might be deemed a negative thing versus something that's truly intended to be positive for everybody.
Right, exactly. And it kind of takes us full circle here because, again, all these pieces that we're doing to help the employees grow and be better really full circles back to increasing and enhancing that patient experience and the service culture. So that's kind of how I feel the loop goes. We get the right people on with the right training, with the right behaviors that support a positive culture, and you've got the secret sauce.
So as we wrap up here today, I know that a lot of times it's like rounding. When we round with our employees, we say, is there anything else you want to ask or tell or share? Is there something else, Teresa, that when you were thinking about our conversation today on the patient experience and having a culture that, really supports great patient care and service excellence, is there anything else, tidbit, advice, tactic,
Yeah.
tool, words of wisdom?
Sure. Well, I would just say that I would hope this would be true in most cases. But for me, I've come to the point in my career where I look at the healthcare industry and how I feel strongly we need to all be servant leaders. And if we approach our service and patient experience in that manner, we're all going to naturally want to do and have that drive to do what's best and safest and highest quality for our patients. And then also serving one another, as you mentioned, the employee experience before, being able to serve, support, and raise up one another as colleagues. I mean, that's the ideal place to work, right? Where everybody's happy as employees, knows everybody has each other's back. And then that, again, all provides for that excellent wow patient experience and just doing those little things that make the difference to our patients. And one thing we probably didn't really mention that I would just add is listening to our patients, because that's how we can really impact some of that wow factor. I never forget a housekeeper was in cleaning a room of a patient, and she was talking with the patient while she was cleaning, and the patient had mentioned how, she hadn't had a chance to do, something with her dog before she was hospitalized. Well, this housekeeper on her break went out, made phone calls, and got help for this lady so that she could stop worrying about her dog and focus on, what was going on with herself. And so, again, it's listening, being thoughtful, and being mindful in the moment, I think. So
that really speaks to empowerment too, that
exactly.
the culture in the organization was that, okay, yeah, we got to get the rooms clean, but this is important too. And I love that some people are naturally wired that way. We know that they're going to engage in that way with patients, but when the organization straight out encourages it, supports it, empowers it, you're going to have more of those kind of examples. And I love that example. That's a great example to end on in our conversation of real life service right there in our healthcare organizations. So thank you, Teresa, and thanks for what you're doing for our Capstone partners, and in particular their patient experience team, but also leadership development and other things that you help with. And I was real glad to have you in this conversation today on the podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sue. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.